Hello, everybody. I have got a video that's probably been a long time overdue for you here, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on Lord of the Rings online. So this is an oldish game now. Um, it does look like so it must be at least 10 years old now because it looks like I've got about I can go with the 10-year frame, I guess. So again, at least 10 years old. I don't know who actually owns. Maybe if I paid more attention while I was loading up the game, I'd have that answer. But anyways, not that important. Some of the things that I'd like to talk about actually is I'll just really only, or I'll start off by kind of my gripes with the game these days, and that's just kind of their business model, I guess, which um, I don't know that I have a real good answer as to a good way to go about it differently. It just seems like they've gone to a free to play model, which again I'm just not all that wild about. I think that it's just generally led to bad things. In almost every single instance that I've come across it. So I don't really like that business model, but it's whatever. That's what they've decided to go with. So like most games, they've done a little bit of a system here where you can actually do or it says you can become a VIP, and then you can pay for a monthly sub, and it does look like you get some savings depending on how long you actually sign up for. This is actually pretty good. If you go right with a 3 month, it looks like you get a complete free month. So that's kind of interesting. So I don't really play these days anymore. So I don't have an active sub, and I don't know how many points you get for each month by subbing, or what it even unlocks. The last time I checked, though, being a VIP was definitely worth it. Like it just unlocks a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to have access to. Now I know recently they've added some progression servers to this game. Now some other games that I've played that have been pretty successful with those, or at least semi-successful. EQ is the biggest one, as far as I know. Very successful with their progression servers. They still seem to be pumping those out every so often, and they seem to be at least somewhat popular. Now, I do like that idea. I feel like, unfortunately, especially with these older games, and I think maybe it is obvious that the older the game gets, the more of a distance there is between new players and old players. And with progression servers, it kind of just restarts everything. And it can actually really breathe some life into old games. So bravo for recognizing that that's a good route, I think, anyway, to keep a game alive. So again, I haven't actually played it. My impression, though, with Lord of the Rings, and I gotta say it seemed a little lame to me, was the only thing the progression server did was limit you on the area that you can go to, basically. So the client stays the same, all the skills, all the, basically literally everything stays the same, except, again, you're only able to travel to certain regions, which, again, whatever. If it keeps the game going, then, good on them. One thing I want to chat about from when I originally played the game. So, obviously this game being, again, that it's 10 plus years old, there's been some pretty major changes to the game. And probably between the time that I had first quit and the time that I had first gone back, because again I've quit and come back a couple of different times over the years. At some point they added this class trait system, and so that this was not in the original game, and it feels a little bit like World of Warcraft, for better or worse, but it is interesting. And excuse me. I think the best aspect to this was, again, when I had quit the first time, I know I had something like four or more skill bars, just packed full of skills that you could use. Now, it gets a little bit, that's a little extreme. I don't know that that we needed to really have that many skills. So, um, so by going this route, what they've essentially done is basically every character gets a certain pool of skills, and then by picking these certain trees, you'll get more active skills, and then a lot of these are just passives that kind of boost up your character. And I actually really like the system of, so it looks like you put 5 points in here, and then you all unlock over here. This is, I don't know what these are considered, like passives or something like that, or sometimes these are skills too, but so again, you put like, a couple of points in here and you unlock this, and then you can put 5 more in and it'll unlock the next one. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing that I like is that you actually can go into, or you can put points into these other trees as well. Unfortunately though, once you've made your selection here, like I did with, this is the Berserker line, if you try to put a point over here or over here, it'll actually cost you 2 points. And so because I only have 1 point available, I'm not able to do that. But so that it adds an aspect where you can kind of trick out your character a little bit more. Maybe there's one skill over here that you really like that you want to grab, or once you've filled up and got all the skills that you like out of your path, then you can head over here and do something else. So I like that. I like those options. Generally, I like any game that's going to give me options like this. The only thing that is a little annoying is, if you notice here, now this is grayed out, but what happens is once I actually, or when I get 4 more points, I actually would be able to unlock this third ability or whatever. Unfortunately though, this is locked behind a sort of a paywall. So I'd have to go into the Lord of the Rings store and buy whatever this slot and unlock that. That's probably around 100 Lord of the Ring points, which you can actually farm those up in various different ways. I kind of like that. It's one kind of neat thing that they've always done about this game is, and especially like the a good way to do them is like the Slayer deed. So basically, it's just running around and kill stuff, And there's usually always 2 tiers. The first tier is, we'll just say for instance, 50 mobs, or 50 of whatever bog lurkers or whatever the mob happens to be. And then that'll get you 5 Lord of the Rings points. And then there's usually always a second tier, and you'll get 10 points for that, but you'll have to kill twice as many. And that's also how you unlock your virtues. So it's kind of like you kind of get I guess more than one thing for doing for killing things. So these are the race traits. So race traits are actually pretty similarly, or they work pretty similarly. They're generally like kill 50 orcs or something like that, and you'll unlock these racials. Unfortunately, though, the same thing with these trait slots. The racial slots work the same way. I don't know if they ever give any of these to you for free, or if you always have to pay to unlock. Again, I don't really remember. And then virtues is the same way. You generally always start. I don't know if you can start out with one of them, and then maybe at level 5 or something you unlock your second slot. But same thing here. I don't know how many they give you for free, if any, or if you just have to pay for all of these. I don't actually remember. So that's kind of one of my gripes with this game. Oops, I went to the wrong deal there. I suspect though. So that even that being said, I suspect that if you were to subscribe for a month, you should get it. You should probably get. Or I know they give you a certain amount of points now. I don't know how far you can make those points stretch, but that can be kind of an answer to getting around having to spend a ton of Lord of the Rings points on your character. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the crafting. Now this game has one of the best crafting systems that I've come across. So basically what happens is you get to choose whatever you want to do. And it's always so I've gone with the Tinker in this case. So the Tinker is a combination of the Jeweler, the Prospector, and the Cook. And generally the way that these work is you'll either get one or sometimes two gathering professions. So like prospector is a gathering gathering class or whatever, however you want to put that, and a profession, sorry. And then like there's sometimes you'll get another one which is like forester, so that's like, you know, chopping trees. Not in this case, but again, sometimes there are two gathering professions. And then usually your third one is the crafter, or the actual crafting profession. So like this one is the jeweler. So prospector, generally speaking, supplies the jeweler with things to craft. And again, it's pretty easy. This stuff. So it looks like now I've already, you know, maxed out my apprentice jeweler apparently here, and I'm working on journeyman. So it looks like I need 280 points. So once I would hit 280, this anvil would fill up, or this anvil would fill up, I should say, and then that'll unlock the next tier. But if you want to crit, which is really what you want to do, because that's going to allow you to actually crit on your crafting, and that just makes better items. So I'll just show you some stuff here. So oftentimes they're, you know, for these recipes, there'll be sometimes multiple outputs. I'm just seeing if I can find. It doesn't look like I have anything with a multiple output. Here we go. Here we go. So here, you know, again, every once in a while you'll come across these recipes with multiple outputs, and these are kind of cool too because it takes the same thing to craft them, but you can select different things. So like if you want, you know, crit versus, I don't know, power or something, oftentimes you can, yeah, like in this case, you could go with that instead. This game does have some interesting ingredient packs. So like if you don't want to go out and gather stuff, you could just use an ingredient pack. It's kind of interesting. I know you can buy those right from the store. So again, if you want to, you know, be lazy and just do that, go ahead. But the other thing here, let's just take a look at something that I can actually crit. So here, down here, this is again, as long as you've completely mastered a tier, then you can crit things. And what this usually does is it takes one extra item that, these are usually, nowadays I feel like they're pretty easy to come across. I suppose, you know, later on in the latter tiers of crafting, this will be a little bit more difficult to get a hold of, but generally if you decide to use one of these, it's going to increase the chances of you critting by a significant amount. In this case, it's 45%, so that's pretty huge. That looks like I only have a base chance of critting of 25%, and again, if I were to use one of these items, I'd get an extra 45 on top of that for a total of 70, so, and that's additive too, so anyways, that's the crafting. There's not much else to it, but it's again, it's one of the more, I should say, it's one of the better crafting systems that I've come across in a game. So, deed log, quest log, traits. Pretty much already talked about this stuff. So this one's got an instance finder. This is pretty common in games now, where you can just, you know, sign up for instances and it'll just stick you in with random people. That's, you know, pretty common these days in MMOs. Epic battles, probably the last thing I want to touch on. I feel like Lord of the Rings has done a fairly decent job over the years of adding interesting and new content. And the last big one that I remember is these epic battles, which is, you know, if you're familiar at all with the lore in Lord of the Rings, it'll be stuff like, you know, taking or defending Helm's Deep. So things of that nature, where you're faced with, you know, a lot of waves of monsters coming at you, and you can go about different ways of killing those monsters. So a little bit like your own character's traits, it's got your epic battles have a sort of trait system as well. So like the engineer, this is all about like setting traps and load times for catapults and that sort of thing. The officer basically just increases the damage and defenses of your troops, and then Vanguard is all about just killing stuff yourself and kill streak rewards essentially. So again, pretty interesting system, decent rewards as well. So really cool addition, I would say, to the game. So overall, I would say again, it's a fun game. One of the things that I usually enjoy about these games is the combat systems. And mostly because that's what you usually do in MMOs, is do a lot of combat. So like this one, for instance, I like because it's a little bit slower paced than some of the other games that I've come across. I just feel like it are some games with the combat being so quick that it doesn't really give you an opportunity to do much for strategy, and it just feels kind of boring and repetitive. Now, that's not to say that the combat in this game, can't or doesn't ever get repetitive, because it does. But again, I feel like you get a little bit more time to make decisions, and again, I feel like maybe your decisions count a little bit more. So that's about it. Sorry, that's about all I've got. And as always, though, I hope the guide was at least informative, and hope you join me for more. Thanks for watching.